So we're going to preach the second part of a series that was supposed to happen like 4 weeks ago. We had a little bit of a snowmageddon in between the last time I was here. And so we're going to finally get to it. I hope you guys are doing well. Let me tell you what, I did not have missing 5 days of school for weather on my bingo card this year. That happened. I don't know what you guys, smaller communities, you guys have kind of got it figured out. You guys, a couple days, you just get back to it. Us in the metro with big babies, we just keep canceling stuff until it's 80 degrees, and then we go back. And I will tell you, all right, my young people in the room, all right, if you're still in school, all right, were you pumped when you found out you got a snow day? Were you like wearing your parents out, like, are we out of school? Are we out of school? Are we out of school? All right, 18 years old, still happens. I have two adults now. My twins just turned 18, which I cannot believe. That's a whole other thing. All right, and then my 16-year-old. And let me tell you what, they had missed 4 days of school for snow. And for whatever reason, we missed that fifth day. And there was no reason for us to be out of school on the fifth day. I am just 100% telling you that out loud. I told everybody in my house on Wednesday afternoon, whatever you've got to do to psychologically get yourself ready for school tomorrow, go ahead and start that process. All right? I don't know what you need to do, scream out to God, whatever the case may be, to get it all out. You're going to school tomorrow. And they're like, we're going to be out. There was a few schools that had canceled, but it was like most people were going back by Thursday. So my wife teaches at a different day. This has nothing to do with anything. This is just kind of giving you an update on my life and the shenanigans that happens underneath my roof from time to time. Everybody likes to know. Everybody always thinks the pastor, man, he's got it figured out. No, we don't. It's chaos at our house. All right? We just organize it a little bit better than others at times. And my wife's district cancels school before us. She's in a different district than me. All right? So it's house divided. All right? So if by some chance Putnam City Schools cancels school, and Edmond Schools has not, that's a real problem in my house. Because the last thing my children want to do is watch their mother not get up and get ready for school while they have to. And that happened on Wednesday. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Putnam City out of nowhere cancels school for Thursday. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. So now it is like we are on death watch at my house. It is like, my girls, they're out like doing stuff. They're like driving around town. That's how clear it is. They're like with some friends and they're like, I heard mom's out of school tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, I can't believe it. She goes, are we out of school tomorrow? And I was like, I don't think so, guys. And they were like, we were so mad. They were so mad. So the whole night goes by. School's not canceled. Other schools are starting to cancel. And I will tell you, the neighborhoods were still pretty sketchy. So I have to get up at like 5 in the morning because my dog he has to go out at 5 a.m. every day. He can't help himself. So I get up at 5, and I look at my phone, and I'm like, no message, no nothing. I'm like, here we go, back to school, back to the grind, no big deal. So I take the dog out, I come back inside, and I hear talking. And I was like, did I leave a television on all night? No, all my children are up at 5 because they're currently scouring the internet trying to find out if they have school, and I had not received a message yet. So I go lay back down. I've got about 30 minutes before I have to get up, and I'm laying there, and then one of my daughters comes in with like a blanket over her head, and she's like, Dad, Deer Creek's out of school. And I was like, we don't go to Deer Creek. You're looking for Edmond Public Schools. That has yet to happen. And sure enough, about 10 minutes later, my phone dings, and it's, hey, school's canceled. And let me tell you what, I don't know what it was about that one extra day, but my goodness, they were euphoric when I told them, hey, turn your alarms off. We don't have school. They're like, are you messing with us? And I was like, no, you legitimately don't have to go to school on a day where it's going to be 50 degrees and the sun's shining. And so consider it a gift. And so that was just something, a little funny story. I can only tell that because none of them are here. And so if they're watching on Facebook, my apologies. But no, it was a lot of fun. We built a snowman and goofed around out in the snow, so that was a lot of fun. And so today, if you remember the last time I preached, we were in the book of Corinthians. We were talking about Paul. He was sharing the story about, we talked about how to get somewhere good, to get where you're going, you got to start right. Right? It's about starting correct. I had this whole big plan. We're going to start right and then finish strong, like back-to-back weeks, and then 8 inches of snow. And so, quick recap. Okay, so we talked about finishing strong, finishing the race. The prize that we earn is not some medal that rusts and falls apart and throws away at the end of your life, that just gets put in a closet somewhere and storage somewhere, never to be seen from again. But instead, we earn this gift that's eternal, right? This relationship with Jesus, that is our gift. And so we have to start right to what? To finish right. And so today we're going to talk about finishing right. And about what that looks like, this idea of, okay, if we're going to start really, really good, shouldn't we finish really, really good? Shouldn't there just be this crescendo at the end, right? That we are found, whatever that looks like, whether Jesus comes back or we draw our last breath, that God finds us doing what it is we're supposed to be doing. To be found with our hands and our feet in the ground, toiling for the Lord. So that we be found finishing that race with gusto. And Paul is really, really good about when he starts something, he's really good to make sure that he finishes it right. And so we're going to be in the book of 2 Timothy today. Chapter 4 is where we're going to be. And he wrote 2 letters to Timothy. Timothy is the heir apparent to his ministry. He is the one that he is going to be handed the keys to what Paul started. He is going to turn over this Lamborghini, if you will, that he has built in ministry. And he's like, hey, you better keep it running fast. I grew up a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. Still am. It's an exercise in futility. But that's neither here nor there. But I will tell you, as a young person in the 90s, you know, my high school career was like, it didn't get any better. Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years when I was in high school. I mean, to tell you what, I was walking around 2 feet off the ground. Didn't realize that was the last time I would ever see victory. We peaked early, okay? But I'll tell you what used to make me so frustrated was the dadgum San Francisco 49ers. Well, you got some 49er fans in the house? Oh, I love it. You guys made me crazy because it was an embarrassment of riches. Who has Joe Montana as their starter and Steve Young as their backup? I used to sit there and go, are you physically kidding me? There's like, hey, we'd have this one Hall of Famer go down. Let's put that other Hall of Famer in that we have and watch him run around and make us all straight crazy. And so it was this embarrassment of riches. That's what Paul's talking about. He has built this ministry. It's an embarrassment of riches of what God has done. He has built this up, and he has written these letters. He has built these churches. He has seen the gospel spread. God's work has been evident. It's been all of these things that have just been astronomical, and Paul's time is drawing near. Because you have to remember, Paul wrote most of the New Testament. You know, he wrote a lot of it. He wrote a lot of it from jail. Right? He wasn't just like hanging out at a typewriter, just knocking out these letters and firing them into the mail system. Right? They get that out to Ephesus, get that out to Galatia, get that out to Thessalonica. No, he's writing these from prison. Guys, and he's handwriting these copies. Right? And he's sitting there and he's writing these, and these couriers and these ministers of the gospel are carrying them to these places. That's where there's all these greetings at the beginning of these letters, because he's greeting these churches. Thank you for your diligence in the work and the things that you do. He's writing these. In fact, if you want to go find a book, and I don't even know if it's still in print, you might have to dig around and find it. If you guys know, I'm a music fan, and one of the guys I've always been intrigued by, and who was a believer, was Johnny Cash. And Johnny Cash wrote a book in the 70s called The Man in White. Anybody familiar with it? Because he was always called The Man in Black, right? He wrote it. It is a kind of a historical fiction that he wrote about the story and the life of Paul. and it's really, really good. Johnny Cash was just wildly, because there was a lot of darkness in Paul, all right, that came through that God worked out over time through faith and his saving. And I think Johnny always kind of gravitated toward his character because Johnny had so much issues in his past. There was drug addiction. There was all these things that he battled through his whole life. And as he grew in his faith and gave his life to the Lord, he always said that there was this journey he was on. He wrote this book called The Man in White, and it's really good. It's just kind of, like I said, it's kind of a historical fiction of Paul, and it's really well done because he kind of talks about how Paul would write these letters. He talked about him being setting by candle and writing out these letters and sending them to these churches and in these jail cells and these prisons, these holes in the ground, sharing this story. And it's just really, really well done. And it gives you kind of because we think about this, I think we do. We think of, setting at his laptop, writing these letters. But it wasn't like that at all. It was in the dark. It was in the cold. It was in the wet. It was by candlelight or by lantern light. And we're not talking lanterns like, kerosene lanterns. They were little clay pots that were flat. I've seen a couple of them from the first century, right? They were about yay big around. They're about that wide. And they had a little spot for a wick and a little deal where they would put oil inside of it. That oil would soak up through that wick and they would light it. Guys, we're talking like little to no light, right? And so that's what he's writing these by in the dark. And so it's kind of a powerful story. So here it comes to this point where we talk about finishing strong. So let's jump in 2 Timothy, starting in chapter 4. He's talking about preaching. And we know that this is the end because Paul's going to tell us very specifically that it is. In fact, this book is written probably, I'd have to guess, within, we don't have a real time frame, but it's very, very, very close to Paul's execution. It's within a matter of time. I do not know, we don't have an exact time frame, but it's close. That's why Paul knows his end is coming, and he wants to be found finishing strong, doing exactly what it is that he's been doing. And he's reminding Paul that I'm giving you the Lamborghini, man. Right? You got to keep it out there, and you got to keep it going. This is some of the things you need to be aware of. This is some of the things you need to be on point about as you take over this ministry, all right, and as you take over this that we have built. He said, I charge you, starting in verse 1, I charge you in the presence of God and of Christ Jesus, who is judging the living and the dead, and by his appearing and his kingdom. He's reminding him, I have seen him. I write this with authority because I've seen it through his appearing. I know that this is true. What I'm telling you, I have eyewitness testimony of. All right? Not only my eyewitness, but I have the testimony of his disciples. I have testimonies of the people that follow. Everything we do and everything I have done and the changes that we have seen is because we have seen this with our own eyes. Preach the word. Be ready in season and out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with complete patience and teaching. So what do we do first? How do we finish strong? Always be ready. Be ready in season and out of season. So when you should be ready? Always. Right? Always. In season and out of season. You may think there's a time you're supposed to be on and there's a time you're supposed to be off. That is not the case. Paul says to finish strong and to be ready is to be always ready. Always, always ready. I've had the pleasure over the years to work with some of the Baptist relief folks that travel all over the country during disasters and things like that. And one of the things I always found fascinating about some of those guys is they have a go bag that they can leave packed 24/7, 365 by their doors. What that go bag is these guys are on chainsaw crews. Some of them work excavators. They fly airplanes for these things. They do all different types of things for relief when a natural disaster happens, because we don't usually get like, hey, it's going to happen at 3 p.m., but they just get a call, and they're called into action to go. I mean, whether it be 9/11, whether it be Katrina, guys that I've gotten a chance to work alongside and be around that have done those types of things, they live ready. I mean, some of them are still employed. A lot of them are retired, but they live in a ready state. They have a bag packed, ready to go. It might be chainsaws. It could be all kinds of things. They basically have tubs and crates that are by their doors or in their garage, ready, packed, fully supplied. When they come back from a trip, They restock and reload. They get everything ready that they need because they never know when the call is going to come to be ready. Be ready in season and out of season, all right, so that you may be able to rebuke, to correct. When we see something, we are called as believers to correct behavior. We're just called in love, right? The Bible tells us in love, and to exhort and to encourage, to lift each other up. We live in a time and a season when encouragement is hard to find sometimes. We got to be able to correct. We have to be able to exhort, and with complete patience and teaching. Ooh, patience is a tough one. Verse 3, for the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but have itching ears, and will have accumulated for themselves teachers to suit their own passions. That is a verse that will ring true and will always be true until the end of time. Paul said, what do we have to do to finish strong? Not only do you have to always be ready, but you have to understand that people will get to a place where they don't want to listen. And they start to accumulate false instead of truth. That's what they start to pile into, and you have to be patient with that, and you have to be long-suffering with that, because you have to be able to build those relationships. Paul ever got wherever he was because of his patience, I believe. Paul always went, when he went on these journeys and went on these places, he always allowed God to go before him. He allowed the work to happen, and that even in these places where you thought that it would never be possible for the kingdom or the gospel to ever get. I think about Acts 17 all the time when he goes to Athens, right? They're worshiping false gods. They're by the hundreds. And he's at the Parthenon preaching the gospel in the Parthenon in Acts 17 with the intellectual elites. And he's so impressive with the gospel that at the end of the message, they are like, can you come again tomorrow? You want to talk about not listening to sound teaching and not listening to sound doctrine and having your ears itched by all these little silly, funny things. That was happening in Greece. And Paul, because of his patience and his steadfastness and because of his love to exhort and encourage with the gospel, was willing to go there and preach the gospel. In fact, it says in Acts chapter 17, he talks about to them to the unknown God, because the Greeks did have a lot of gods that they worshiped, and they were very afraid that they had left one out. And so they always had a statue for what they named the unknown God. And Paul said, the unknown God, you call him unknown, I call him Yahweh. All right? And so that's what he went to go and preach, and he was so impressive in doing so that at the end of his time, they asked him to come back. Those cats didn't ask people to come back because they truly felt that they were a little bit smarter and a little bit better than everybody else. But here comes this young, ruddish, brash Jew from Jerusalem who has this incredible, incredible education, but has been blessed by God, who's able to preach, and they were changed by it. So verse 4, he says, they'll turn away from the listening to the truth and wander off into myths. We live a lot in that today. We live a lot in that today, and we are called to push back against that. Not with violence or yelling or screaming or any of those types of things, but if we're going to be finishing strong, we have to be willing to push back against what we know is not true. And sometimes that requires hard conversations. That requires to step into moments that are very, very, very difficult. Might be even in your own family. Might be even in your own work circles. Where people do not listen to sound doctrine anymore. And they don't want to hear the truth. I recently heard listening to a podcast, and it's videoed, and so it's on YouTube. You can watch it on YouTube as well. And I was watching a clip of it, and this gentleman was being interviewed about the historical authenticity of Jesus. And the podcaster that hosts this particular show was blown away. Here we live in the 21st century, full access to knowledge and history. You can search anything. You can find these documents. They're readily available online to read and do the very own research yourself. And it's easier to say that he wasn't who he said he was than it is to take 10 minutes and read something and find out that, historically, he's accurate. He existed outside of the Bible. We have historical documents that are written by historical people who were alive during the time of Christ, writing about the mystery of this person, Jesus. And it was amazing in the 21st century, 2026, to see someone's eyes and mind and heart almost blown to pieces for them to think for the first time in their life they considered that Jesus might actually be who he said he was. You're like, how is that even still, right? You're kind of like, how are we this far into this thing? And you're just now thinking, well, maybe he's, I mean, you're like, no, it's right here, but you've bought into the myth, and it's easier because it's hard to follow Jesus. It's hard to have him become Lord, Master, and teacher of your life. So it's easier to follow the myth where there's no accountability. And so then he turns back he kind of reminds Timothy about all these things that are happening in culture that he has to be aware of and he has to fight back against so that he's be found doing what he's supposed to be doing when his time comes. All right? And then in verse 5 he says, "For you always be sober-minded, endure suffering, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry." Do the work. Fulfill your roles. You are going to have to endure some hardship at times. And let me tell you what. Paul was like, I'm not even going to tell you what happened to me because, brother, that's going to be way too spooky. All right? I've been through some stuff. Bit by snakes, shipwrecked, thrown every hole in the ground, jailed, chased all over Kingdom Come by everybody. And he's like, we're not even going to get into that because if I tell you all that, you might not do this. All right? But here's the deal. He said, you will endure the hardship. All right? But you'll do so because it's the ministry, it's the calling that's on your life. That's what you'll be found doing. You will finish strong by doing this. It will fulfill your ministry. Here, I'm handing over these embarrassment of riches, these things that God has done. You now get to fulfill. You now get to keep doing. Why? What is all of this? Because in verse 6 he says, "For I am being poured out as a drink offering." He's telling Timothy it's going to happen really, really soon. My time has come. There's a stirring deep within me. Right? My time has come. And the time of my departure has come. He even says it. He knows that any day now, they're going to come take him out of this jail cell, and he's going to have his life taken. He's going to be executed finally. Governments have just had enough of him. He's been a menace long enough. They're going to call him a blasphemer, and they're going to kill him. But Paul was always found doing what he was supposed to be doing when he was supposed to be doing. He's telling Timothy, I have finished strong. In fact, he goes on and says this, "For my departure has come," in verse 7, "I have fought this fight. I have ran." I love this verse, man. This verse, I get tingly all over when I read it. Because it's Paul's decree. It's his final word. These are his utterances of the end. Right? We don't get this a lot from historical figures. We don't get a lot, especially biblical historical figures, where we get this idea of where their heart and their mind was at the very end. We don't get a lot of that. The only other thing that I compare this to, and personally to me, that has just as much, is when Jesus said, "It is finished." To me, this is like kind of in that vein, that I have completed what I have been done to do. Jesus himself finished the race. He was found doing what he was supposed to be doing. He finished strong. Paul says, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. I did not wane." I think all the way back to Damascus. Right? It's like this was a movie, right? Because sometimes I think and imagine in those terms. There'd be a flashback right here at the end. There'd be this flashback to this young Roman boy full of hate, full of frustration, had overseen the murder and martyr of many, walking down this road to Damascus to go and harass more, to go and condemn more, to go and kill more. There'd be this flashback to that moment. And there'd be the heavens open, the skies rip apart. Some real Old Testament scary stuff. And Jesus just comes down and lands right in front of Paul and says, "Why do you persecute me?" And there would be this drastic picture of this transformation of Paul's life. And his heart being changed for the gospel, and Jesus changing his life, and he becoming the greatest missionary that we've ever seen in this world at this time. He becomes this whole new creature, right? This new creation. The old is gone, the new has come. Right? You see this brilliant transformation. And then the flashback would go right back to here. This gap, right? There's this time frame. And here, that's where it started. This is where it ends. And it says, "I have fought the fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but to also who loved his appearing." He knew. Like, I've done what I'm... Look at that. That's fantastic. Dramatic pause. He had done everything he had supposed to do. He had finished that full race, and he knew ultimately his reward was coming. And there was no fear in him whatsoever. Even though he knew there was a brutal end that was coming, he wasn't afraid of it. He wasn't fearful of it. Why? Because he was doing exactly what he was supposed to do when he was found to do it. I think about all the times when you get older, you look back on your life and you think, man, I kind of cut some corners there a little bit. You know, as a coach and as a person who loves sports, and I look back on my own like athletic career, which was not stellar by any stretch. But I think about all the times that, you know, when your coach looks away and you kind of take a break on a race. He's not watching, I won't work hard. And then as soon as he turns back around, you're like, turn away. I think about that all the time, and I think about it, it's like so many times, and trust me, I didn't play for any coach that was omnipotent or omniscient. I can promise you that. They weren't all-knowing, and they weren't everywhere. So many of us walk through our life and our faith journey, we're like, he's not watching. No, he's always watching. So it's best just to be found doing what you're supposed to be doing. Because there will come a time when you will get caught not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that's where the rebuking comes in, and the correction comes in, and the discipline comes in. The question is, what will you do with that? Will it change your course, or will you be disobedient and fall back into a sin pattern? It's that simple. Because there is this reward that is waiting for you, and Paul did everything he could with every moment of his life. And he was not without sin. He talked about thorns in his side all the time. There's this sin, there's this thing I'm battling with, I'm struggling with, but I'm trying to discipline my body to come through it and to fight through it so that when the time comes, I'll be ready. So that when it comes to the point when I finish the race, it is with great strength and power that I do so. I don't fade into the finish line. I explode to the finish line. There's a young lady, her name's Natalie, and she was the 1 or 2 time, I'm not for sure. She was fasted. She's a Santa Fe grad, and my mother-in-law was her principal, and then she went to Oklahoma City schools, and then she was from Edmond, then she moved back to Edmond for track when she got into high school. And Natalie is the 1 or 2 time Gatorade Player of the Year for cross country. which means she was of all 50 states, was voted by coaches and whatever as the best cross-country runner in the country twice. She went to Santa Fe. She's at Ole Miss, running track. She's probably a little over 5 foot, 5'1", 5'2", sweet girl, super smart, great, fantastic. But let me tell you what, she was an absolute rocket on the track. Every record, and some of them, she beat some of the boys too. She was fast. When she got on a track, the way she ran was absolutely unbelievable. You could not help, this little bitty tiny dynamo, when she would get on the track, you could not help but watch and stare. Because she was so fast, and she was so trained, and she was so disciplined, nothing broke her stride. Whether she was running 5 miles or 2 miles or 1 mile, I kid you not, it was like she was being chased. We would stand down there during football practice. I'd find myself, I'm coaching a position, and the cross country would train on the track about twice a week when they weren't out on their cross country course. They would train on the track, and I'd find myself like watching her run, because I'd just be like, that is just crazy. Because she just it felt like she could go around the track in like 10 seconds. Just. And at state, 2 years ago, her senior year, she was running the 2 mile, 3,200. But she actually got upset in that race, which was kind of a big deal. She came in second. That didn't happen often. But here's what was crazy. Watching her run in that setting, you know where she was the absolute fastest in the whole race? The end. It was crazy. You could not, if you took me outside right now and said, go run 2 miles, I'd be like, I would rather fist fight you. I think that would be the better option, because running 2 miles right now sounds horrific. I don't even want to walk 2 miles. I walked 1.5 miles yesterday with my wife and I, beautiful day, and I was like, this is terrible. The whole time I had my earbuds in, I'm like, I hate this. She was incredible. And the further it went, and the longer it went, the faster she got. That makes zero sense to me. But and it used to crack me up. When she'd finish the cross line, she'd run 5 miles or 2 miles. She always ran with a watch. She always had a smart watch on, because she was always timing herself. She was always pushing herself to be better than the last time she went out there. And she'd finish across the finish line. She just ran, 5 miles in like 4 minutes or whatever. And she'd be like looking at her watch, walking off. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'd be like, dial 911. Because she knew that the finish and the start were important. There's time in the middle where you kind of set the pace and you move forward, but she knew that her start was crazy important, and she knew her finish was crazy important. That is where the race is won. Setting the pace right, and then she had a kick at the end that was like something out of, the Olympics. I will not be shocked that in a few years we're watching her compete there. Paul said, I have run this race. I have finished this fight. I have kept this faith. And because of all of that, there is a reward for that. And it's a reward not like the one he talked about when he wrote to the Corinthians, that falls apart and rusts and nobody thinks about. But instead, a reward that's eternal, that never rusts, that never fails, that never grows old or tired. Why? Because we were found doing what we're supposed to be doing. We were exhorting. We were rebuking. We were preaching the gospel. We were found doing what we were supposed to be doing when we were supposed to be doing it. And because of that, we're ready in season and out of season. We wake up when our feet hit the ground. God, use me today. Make me an instrument of your gospel. Make me an instrument of your peace. Make me an instrument of your scripture. Whatever you need me to be today, let me be that today. And step into the moments when they come, so that you may be found kicking across the finish line. Because we'll all hit that point. There's a stir. There's a great song called There's a Stirring Deep Within Me. Lord, I know my time has come. We will all come to that place. It is unavoidable. But Lord, when that happens, let me be able to say what Paul says. I have run the race. I have fought the fight. I've kept the faith. Let's pray.